and you have the time, you don't have the pressure to repay anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys, sorry, do you call it lumber? A lumber loan is what they called?
Yeah, it's Lombard loan. Yeah, you can check on internet. It's old, but it was reserved for rich people. For example, in France, we have a company who is doing that. That is doing that. It's the entry ticket. It's a 250,000 euro.
Yeah.
No, but
And
with
I want people to
Nexo,
really see the power of what he's saying, because this was reserved only for mega wealthy. Now all of us have access to this.
Yes.
Right. So this is really powerful, right?
Yes.
This is a game changer, actually. Any other comments, Jean-Marc? Other questions anybody else has on this? Let's go on. All right, so here's the scenarios for Bitcoin prices beyond 2025. We have a regular halving cycle, which happens every 4 years, right? In that case, we have up to 80% drawdown, so the price goes way up, goes way down. So expect it, right? Price generally stabilizes at about 5 times the previous cycle, and projections for 2028, 2029 is that we get to about 500K. Okay, that's the regular world that we've been in. But some other things are happening now where we have all these big institutions and they're coming in. But the big institutions are, like BlackRock and MicroStrategy and MetaPlanet and US government and China and you name it. They're all buying it, right? What happens then is we potentially get this super cycle scenario. In a super cycle scenario, institutional adoption is going to create sustained demand without severe correction. So instead of going down 80%, maybe it only draws down 30 or 40%. Don't guarantee that when be careful. But nonetheless, ETF inflows, because all this money is flowing into BlackRock and IBIT and Fidelity and every one of these ETFs, they're just drawing in all this money into the market, right? So the projections here are by 2027, we're looking at about a $750,000 Bitcoin. Again, this is why you don't sell it. If you sell your Bitcoin to 100,000 and it goes to 750,000, how are you going to be feeling? Not good. You're not be feeling good, right?
So I have a question,
Go ahead.
John.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, we are talking about Bitcoin, but the price of Ethereum, Binance, BNB will go up as well.
Yes, you are absolutely correct. And Isaac's going to go into some of those in terms of charts as well. But you're right. They are definitely also going up because Bitcoin is like it's the capstone asset. Everything else in the class follows it, right? So when it goes up, almost everything else goes up with it, even though everybody loves to argue about this coin and that coin. But the truth is, when Bitcoin goes up, they all go up. Okay? And some of them will go up even more. But the thing is that your key strategy is that you don't want to hold those past the cycle. You want to be able to move those into either Bitcoin or fiat. But to me, these days, I'd move into more Bitcoin because fiat is just getting weaker and weaker and weaker, right? I feel like it's almost a waste of time to have any more than like a couple of months of expenses worth of fiat. I don't find it very valuable personally. But you're right. You can look at all those other coins because there are others. I mean, like Solana did really good for me this cycle. I made really great gains from the last cycle on Solana. And then I moved some of that into Bitcoin. So you can absolutely do that, Joe Mark, and I think it's a good thing. One thing that I do hear people say, and I think they're correct, is that Bitcoin is kind of its own asset class, right? Where all the other cryptos, they're owned by Ethereum Foundation or Ripple Labs or this one.
Yeah.
Nobody really knows, the ownership of anybody. And I'll show you later, you can mine it, in like a rural area of Uganda. You can mine Bitcoin anywhere, which is so powerful for Africa, right? You can mine it anywhere and there's no central control, which I love. That's why Africa is able to get into it, where before you had to always kind of like beg the banking system to have access. Where the other coins, they are controlled by one company, which means, let's say you get some XRP, right? And Ripple Labs is like, John Mark, for whatever reason, we don't want you to have your XRP. They could freeze it if they wanted to, right? But that is not the case with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is completely permissionless, which is why it's such a unique asset, right? It's like somebody digging up gold in the ground and nobody can really stop you from digging it up and keeping it, right? That's what Bitcoin is like.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree. I wanted to add, I'm sorry I couldn't come off mute earlier. But no, I agree with that whole strategy because that is my strategy. And especially the borrowing against your Bitcoin, because in the end, the most important thing that people need to understand with that is it's going to make the supply even harder as more and more people begin to use this strategy, right?
Yeah.
So, because, when you use this strategy, most people are not going to sell it because of those reasons that you gave. It doesn't incur capital gains. And then and another thing too, you can write it off. You can write off your interest too, which is another thing. So I just tell people with the strategy that you're given, define how much Bitcoin you'll never sell, and have a strategy. Even if it's for your kids, grandkids, great grandkids. For example, if you believe Bitcoin is going to hit 1 million by 2030, like I do, you might decide to buy like 20 Bitcoin today. You may hold 10 forever, and then 10 to potentially sell in 2030, and whatever strategy you have with that. But I think the most important thing is just having a strategy as well.
Yeah, Lynette, that's a great point. And I think what you're talking about, this is generational wealth for sure, right? That's what you're thinking. Think of this just the way you like any inheritance. And I think especially for African diaspora, African American, Africa, a lot of the wealth has been taken out of the community. So this is really bringing it back in. So this is really a great way to get that generational wealth. Welcome, Tanya. So think about that, right? You do not want to give that up, especially with all these big companies trying to buy it up right now, right? Do not sell them your Bitcoin. Don't do it. Right? All right. And then the other scenario is what we call hyper-Bitcoinization. Okay. Hyper-Bitcoinization is this idea that we have everything, right? We're talking, buying Bitcoin. How many dollars am I going to get my Bitcoin? How many dollars am I going to get for my Bitcoin? But here's the thing. We're looking at possibly, maybe as soon as 2030. A lot of people think that. We might come to because the dollar is getting weaker. I don't know if people are noticing that, but the dollar is getting weaker, okay? Along with pretty much every other fiat currency. We could get to a point where everything ends up being priced in Bitcoin, okay? So people are not going to ask you how many dollars is that. They can say how many Satoshis or how many Bitcoin is that going to be. And in that case, there is no advantage to holding fiat currency anymore. We get to a point where, in fact, Larry Fink, the guy in charge of BlackRock, the most powerful man in the world in terms of the company he owns, he said, if the dollar doesn't basically get together, there's a good chance that we're going to end up with Bitcoin as a reserve currency for the globe, right? This is why banks and everybody are getting into it at this point, because they know that this scenario, though we can't guarantee it's happening, this could definitely happen. And you're not going to talk to me anymore about how many dollars or how many, Swiss francs or how many euros is this. You're going to ask me how many Bitcoin is it. And at that point, I mean, the whole game is up. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so that is a real possible scenario that we're looking at here. And this is another reason that I keep saying, do not give up your Bitcoin. I agree with Jack Mallers completely. Do not give people your Bitcoin. Just keep it. It doesn't matter what you do, just keep it though. Okay. All right, cool. Any other questions on these different three scenarios before we go on? All right.
Do government in Africa start to have a Bitcoin fund? Because if the price is 10x in 5 years, it's a good it's a game changer for them.
Yeah, you are right, and I've been advocating this for years. I'm sure there are other people too. African governments have really been, basing everything on the IMF, right, which is the International Monetary Fund, and the under loans they get. But those are all fiat loans. Those fiat loans are going to be almost valueless as the economy shifts into digital assets, which it is. It's shifting, right? So, John Mark, exactly what you're saying is something I've been preaching for years. African governments have absolutely, like that side of the fence, Nigeria. I wish that they would get a Bitcoin reserve, right? Ethiopia is doing a good job. They're now, I think they have like 3,250 or something like that. I got to see that number from their mining in the dam, right? So they actually have a reserve of Bitcoin now, which is quite valuable. I wish that every one of the countries on the African continent would do the same thing, right? Mine the Bitcoin. We have so much renewable energy. I don't care if it's wind, it's solar, geothermal, hydro, whatever it is, and keep it in reserve, right?
Yes.
That is definitely the thing to do.
Yes, and it's cheaper than building a gold mine because gold mine you have infrastructure, you have people are stealing. There's a big complexity that when you have a solar farm, you put it on 1, 2, 5, 10 hectares with cattle. It's a big business, and it's easy to manage.
Yeah, for sure. That is definitely the case. And then the other thing I think about it as well, like you said, you can actually use excess electricity. So one of the big issues in Africa is the lack of consistent power grid and electricity. But if you set up electricity, a lot of people are like, oh, there won't be demand, we can't sell it. But if you just start mining Bitcoin with the excess electricity, that's going to make money for you on the Bitcoin side, and it will use all the excess electricity that may not be getting used, right? So now it becomes profitable to put electricity and solar or whatever it might be throughout the whole continent, right? So it's a win-win-win, in my opinion. And I hope and pray that African governments and frankly all diaspora do this, because there's a small window. I think by 2030, the window's going to close, in my opinion, personally. There's a very small window for this to happen. Cool. Any other comments or thoughts before we go on? All right, let's keep going. All right, so spotlighting Africa's crypto boom, inflation hedge, as we talked about, 37% increase in crypto wallets in Zimbabwe estimated, 2.1 billion in trading volume, Q1 2025 across in the continent. CBDCs, which I am not a fan of. These are essentially controlled by the government, which means that they can stop anybody anytime from using them. But 9 nations are in pilot phase with them, including Nigeria did it, although nobody used it. 175 million invested in infrastructure, right? P2P trading, we have 18% increase in Bitcoin trades since 2024. And this is across the continent. Again, the number 2 nation in the world, I think, for P2P is Nigeria. 920 million monthly P2P volume across Africa. 42% of users are trading at least weekly. And remittance solutions, Nigerian and Kenyan startups, leading blockchain transfers, 63% reduction in transfer fees. It's amazing how much the fees are on things like MoneyGram and Western Union, that kind of stuff. They take like 20, 30% of your money. Bitcoin fee is like $1. I mean, I know that people don't know about Bitcoin or other cryptos, but I don't know why you would give that much of your money up when you could give less than 1%, right? And 4.8 billion in crypto remittances in 2024. So this is very powerful, and much more so because in America or Europe, even in most parts of Asia, not Southeast Asia necessarily, but most parts of Asia, this is just like people are like, well, I could invest in stocks, or I could invest in bonds, or I could invest in gold, or I could invest in this or that or crypto, right? Or Bitcoin. But that's not the case. In Africa, this is basically like just financial stability, right? This is just, and this is a conversation I always hear. I always hear the Western conversation about, oh, well, I don't know if I like it as an asset class. I'm like, for 2/3 of the world, this is like just being able to buy bread and necessities without your money going down through the floor, right? And getting so weak. So it's a very different scenario throughout the continent. And that's where we talk about financial inclusion. All right, and African diaspora leadership innovation. So startup leadership. We have examples like Tavania Evans, the Guap Coins in the US, Sinclair Skinner, Lamari pioneering new crypto platforms, remittance revolution, Chipper Cash, wallet stable coins. These are flow money through diaspora communities. Conference Spotlight Afrotech 2025 showcases, I'm not going to misspell that or mispronounce, M.A. Archibong, Meta Blockchain, and Olugbenga Abula, Flutterwave as thought leaders. These are all African diaspora. And investment trends, Serena Williams, Serena's Ventures, and Robert S. Smith's Vista Equity, increasingly diversifying African Web3 projects. So I absolutely love that we're seeing so many African diaspora, African-American people investing, getting this space. This is, I mean, I lived a lot of my life in California, and I can tell you that it was very hard as, African-American person, or really, anybody who's not part of the network of Silicon Valley, it's very hard to get that funding. But now that funding is getting available for everybody, because when you invest in these types of projects, you can use the tokenization, you can use the coins, you can invest in these types of projects, and now you can become your own venture capitalist. You can become involved in these types of projects. We'll talk about later, right? And this is really great, especially for Africa diaspora and people of color all over the world, actually, right? So this is a very powerful thing too. And welcome, join us. All right, so we can see the pricing here. This just shows us the latest moves. Bitcoin up at 111,000. I love it staying over 100,000, which is a great thing. And we've been about what's the mark there? We're about $3,000 on Ethereum. I got to check. So we actually got up quite a bit on both. Again, everything in the market goes with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin goes up, the market goes up, right? See some comments. I'm not sure if they're questions. All right, let me check and see if those are questions or not. Good morning, Jacqueline. How are you? Very good. Welcome. Okay, so challenges, opportunities. Challenges, high market volatility, right? Fluctuated 18% in May. Now, here's the thing. You hear people say that, oh, that's a challenge. But to me, that's actually an opportunity. If I put my money into a high yield savings account and I get 4%, that's not doing anything for me because inflation, and I'm being very conservative here, is maybe like 10%, right? So I'm losing money every month in that account. But if I can utilize this volatility to my advantage, I can beat the market every time, right? That's really actually, in my opinion, opportunity. Regulatory uncertainty. So Ghana's central bank reversed crypto policy twice, although I do have team members in Ghana and they tell me that, the president's brother is really into Bitcoin and crypto. So I expect to see some positive things happening there. Access limitations in rural areas, only 32% connectivity in sub-Saharan Africa rural regions. So there's a lot of phones and things like that, though. A lot of mobile and things like that, cell phones, even feature phones that people can use to access still. Opportunities. Institutional adoption is growing. So BlackRock, we said, Bitcoin ETF is at $70 to $72 billion assets under management. That is so fast, less than a year. Diaspora knowledge networks expanding 14 new Africa-focused accelerators, launched in 2024. I've been looking at that myself. I have all the details on those. And financial inclusion, as we talked about, all of basically the Southern Hemisphere of the world, basically, has the opportunity to benefit from this. 73% of East Africans remain unbanked, and 65% have mobile access, meaning they could access Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, digital wallets, right? Just like, in Kenya, they have M-Pesa and things like that, right? So this is a really powerful opportunity. And it's actually, like I said, the same thing, even, African Americans in Americas as well, because, that there's, in terms of actually being included in those investment networks and things like that, from Silicon Valley is really where the money was, that generally was not available for the most part. But now this is available, right? So this opens a lot of new opportunity. All right. And then looking forward, unity and growth, right? So connecting our MeetUp network, this was here for education. We also want to start moving into more investments. We're going to talk about this idea of a Wakanda African investment group, where we're able to hopefully do different investments across the continent. I'm going to show you some ideas and concepts we have for that. And then build and create solutions for our communities, right? Because we really want to see everybody benefit from this, especially in this small window that I feel that we have. I think a lot of other people do too. I don't think we have a huge window. Like I said, it's pretty much a 5-year period. After 2030, most people are saying all bets are off, especially because of AI. AI is changing everything. Okay? Together, we can harness crypto technology for education, security, financial empowerment, and across our communities. And I am not going to get into this. Now I'm going to hand it over, unless there's questions, to Isaac. I'll come back into the Ethiopia Renaissance stand later. Any questions before I hand over to Isaac? All right. All right, Isaac, all yours.
John. Hi everyone, my name is Isaac Alabi, and I will be taking you through just some technical analysis on Bitcoin and any other assets that you guys have got.
Isaac, have you got a little more volume? I'm not sure if it's just me, but maybe you're able to go up along your volume.
One second. Is that any better?
I can hear you. Is everybody else here okay? I think you're good. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear.
Cool. Great. Yeah, so what I'm going to be going through is I'll be doing some technical analysis, strictly technical, not looking at any fundamentals or anything that's going on around the world with wars and sanctions and anything else. This is a platform called TradingView. It gives you real-time prices of different types of assets that you can trade, invest globally. Probably the most popular trading platform that you can use to get accurate prices on different assets and trading pairs. We're going to be looking at Bitcoin. We've also got ADA, SUI, I think it's pronounced, or SUI, was one of the ones I received, and any of the other ones you guys might have an invested interest in, also Ethereum, sorry. We'll have a look at what I see happening in the market, what's currently, where we currently are at on the market, and I will try and keep this as simple as possible, because I know there's different levels of people here who are new, who have been in crypto or have been trading different types of assets, whether it be Forex or stocks for years, or just new to it. But this is really good platform to get yourself an idea as to if you are trading, you're doing futures trading, or if you're just looking for a position to buy a specific asset. The charts for me are probably, for what I've been trading for the last few years, are probably the safest way for me to make calculated and informed decisions on different assets that I want to get into myself. So I'll start with Bitcoin. And one thing I will say to everyone, when you're looking at different trading pairs, this is Bitcoin and USDT, so Bitcoin trading with the US digital dollar, as you would probably be easiest way to familiarize yourself with it, is start on the highest time frame that you possibly can. You can go to yearly, but monthly is probably more ideal. And what this does is give you a good whole viewpoint of what's been happening month to month. Each one of these candles, these are the red and green candles, represents a whole month of trading up, down. As John mentioned earlier on, stable coins just stay flat line, $1. It might go up to $1.01 or go down to 99 cents, but more or less it's at $1. And Bitcoin, as you know, is incredibly volatile. So you're going to get people coming at different levels, selling, buying, etc. So what we're looking at here is the red and greens are representatives of different trading volumes over across a month for the last, since when? This is going back to September 2019 up until now. We're January, this is up until June 2025. But we'll really be looking at what's happened up until the end of May. And then we'll scale down up into the daily chart, which I think is enough to really look at if you want to position yourself into try and get into Bitcoin. So I've done lots of different types of trading styles, and one of the trading styles that's worked for me over the last few years is just, like I said, keeping my trading sheet as clean as possible. I'm not going to put on any, I might put on one of my indicators that I use, but I'll try and keep it to the simple pay and free, what's it called, indicators that everyone has access to. And that will be the volume profile indicator, and literally just using lines, just to look at what Bitcoin's doing, different price levels, etc. Okay, so we hit an all-time high just over a year ago, 1st of March 2024, and Bitcoin went up to, so if we look at this green candle was the first one that we got, and the high where you see here, this is H is represented for high and L is represented for low, and then V, the volume, etc. So we had a high here of, where we are, $73,881 US, and that was brilliant, exciting. Price over the next few months was in and around that area, trying to break that all-time high, because it was the first time price had actually got back to that same level. If we look here, going back to when was this? 1st of October. You can see the date at the bottom, right at the bottom of the screen. 1st of October 2021. We had a high of 67,000, and everyone was excited. Bitcoin's going to go to 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, whatever, and it didn't. And I'll tell you one of the reasons how you can spot what is happening in the market. And I'm also going to give you my own personal opinion of what I'm seeing in the market and why I'm not as bullish as most people might be. But this is solely based on technicals, nothing fundamental what's happening on outside of the crypto market. So we had a high here. Price came back up to test that level and broke that high. So let me just do some lines. So this was the high that we had in 2021. Here, sorry, that is just an absolutely shocking line. Let me delete that and do that again. So here we had that high, and price, obviously we hit that, we broke that high here, got rejected, and price came back down and came back to retest this historic high in what was this? February 2024, last year. Broke it and held above it. And what is interesting is when price came up to test it, it held, and we can see how it held. So this was a level we would call a resistance level. So resistance is like, let's say, the roof. And it hit that roof, it hit that high, broke through that high, and then was able to get enough support to hold that level and did not break back down that level. So since March 2024 up until October 2024, price was basically just going sideways, was just in that neutral zone, did not drop down below the previous all-time high. We had a few rejections, but what this indicates here is every time price tried to go below, aggressive buyers stepped in to the market to keep price above that level. So we had enough momentum of people who wanted to get into crypto buying at this key level. So in and around, let's say, the 60,000 level. So that is called an area of interest. People thought, you know what, regardless of whatever happens to Bitcoin in the future, I'm happy to get in at this price point. And people stepped into the market aggressively and got in at that price point, whether it be retail traders or institutions. What it shows here is that we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months, 8 months of support. And for me, that is a significant amount of support being created over a period of time. So from March up until October, price constantly was testing that level and creating the support. And regardless of whatever asset you're trading, this will be the same sort of analysis you'll look at for what price is doing on the charts to say, okay, I'm confident that this is a safe area that I would probably want to buy, or do you know what? I'm happy with the gains I've made. I might sell all of my asset or sell a portion of my asset. But if it's Bitcoin, or let's say it's your home, and regardless of what the price goes up and down, you love it, you're going to keep it forever, you don't even need to look at these charts. Just delete this sort of app. Do not even look at the charts. Don't even look at the price of Bitcoin. Delete the news and just park it away in your cold storage wallet. So what we got to is towards the end of the year in October, there was another aggressive move up to this level. So we had a little test there in June, got rejected, came back down to that support, supported it, and then obviously price just absolutely rocketed through in November 24, end of last year, and made this new all-time high on the 1st of November. So once it done that, this is now our new area of interest, because this is what we look at as our support. So I've got it here. Let me just get this indicator off. So let me just bring this down a bit. So here we had, this high was, so if we look at the top of the H, 73,881, price broke above that. And then it came back down to test the top of it. So we look at this wick. Sorry, if we look at this candle here on April this year, this green wick here, price pinged the top of this area. So the low, if we look at the L at the top of our screen here, if we look at the low of this, was 74,457. So for me, this is now our support. This area here is now our support. Regardless of what's happening up there, ignore all of that for now. This is now our support. So the strong support area that I'll be looking at is if price comes back down to test. I'll tell you exactly what area I will be looking at. And you can write this down if you want. 73,000. So anything between 73,000 and 74,000 is going to be a very interesting level. So price came back up, created a new all-time high. I'll get that in a second. And it came down came down, and then the buy stepped in again aggressively. This wick here is not a full-blown candle. It's literally price tried to come down to there. So if it had closed in that month, fully green body candle, then that would have been a sign that buyers didn't really step in. The fact that they had a lot of people selling, and then aggressive buyers stepped in again. So we've got aggressive buyers that have stepped in and around between the 74,000 and 84,000 level. Okay, so this is where price was sitting. This could be another area of interest. I'll mark this up actually. Let me do this a little bit more cleaner, sorry. Right, so we've got some levels here. We've got this zone here. This zone for me is not really that strong. Nothing's really happened there. Not enough has happened here. And then we've got this area here, and we've got a new all-time high with price. Price has gone back up to, what was this level? This high, if we look at the H, 110,000 on the dot. That was the ultimate high of price there. Didn't get any higher than that. And we can tell that from that wick, that green wick here, it got shut back down. A lot of people sold at this area and thought, you know what, I'm happy with that. I'll take some profits off the table, or I'll sell whatever it is I've got in its entirety. A lot of people got excited, and more people have got back in and around this price, which is 81,925. So we've got this area of interest here, and price has now made another move up to the top, and it's broken that previous all-time high because it closed here at 111,000, just quite 112,000. And now we're up to, it peaked at 111,000, but we're in and around now at 105 K, just call it. So we've got a few interesting areas of interest here. So, right, so we've got here, so 1 second. So, right, we're here, there 105. Okay, so what we want to see price do is either come back down here to test this level. There hasn't been enough test here. It hasn't tested this level, and see if this is really going to be a support, the 81, 82K level, and probably make another descent. One thing I really want everyone to pay close attention to is the volume in the market. So let me just delete some of these lines so it doesn't confuse everyone. And it's important. We can always draw these back on at any time. One thing I always look at, and that's worked very, very well for me, is something called a divergence. And the divergence, you look at what the charts, what's happening in the charts, and what's happening in the volume. And this is where it can sometimes get quite confusing, because Bitcoin is a bit of an anomaly. That it's still classified as a new asset. We've got the retail, us buyers, us people on we might think we've moved in the market by buying even if we buy 100,000, we've got institutes that are actually moving the market. The market makers, they make the price. They dictate what happens in the market. Here you've got the volume profile, and this is why I want to try and keep it as simple as possible. The volume for me is showing a decline, and price is increasing. So there you've got a clear discrepancy in what is actually happening with Bitcoin. The price cannot continue to go up if there isn't a volume to reflect that.
Isaac, can I chime in on that one?
Yeah, sure.
So my opinion, I'm a more medium to long-term view investing, is that the reason the volume is going down is because it's getting locked up in institutional wallets. It's getting locked up in, sovereign wealth fund wallets, and anybody who's got the the thought process to hold on to it. And so even though the volume is going down, right, in terms of transactions, because people are locking up like they lock away gold or like a precious metal or something, but the value of it would go the other way, because the reason people are locking it up that way is because of the expectation of increased value. So I'm just going to put that out there.
And I totally agree with you. And what the key point I want to make about this is where you actually position yourself to get into Bitcoin or any other asset is I don't feel that you're totally out to be able to get it at a lower price point. What you would notice here is that Bitcoin, and what the market always does, the market always looks for balance. The market has to have buyers and sellers for any market, regardless of whatever the market is. And so the market has to balance itself out. And here for me, there hasn't really been a balance. There's been just a lot of people coming in and buying, and as John has rightly said, locking up their assets. But with anything else, obviously Bitcoin is obviously slightly different because you can leverage this asset. Well, you will probably be able to leverage it a lot more easier in the future. But as it is now, there isn't a lot of let's say mainstream facilities to be able to leverage on that asset because it's still very new and there's still a lot of regulations that need to be put in place to allow people to do that a lot easier, like you would do with your house or you do with gold or anything else. So what you want to look at is where price will look to balance itself out. And one of the other things I like to do is look at trends. And obviously we've got this trend line here, and this is, trend lines for me, especially on high time frames, have been extremely successful in coming back and testing a key area. I'm just going to drop down to the weekly. So I spend a lot of time on Bitcoin, but it's the nature of the beast. Same thing. Obviously, we've got price increasing, volume decreasing. But what I was watching months back, and I've left this line here, and I will leave this line here because I know it will eventually come back down to test this line. I'll just continue to increase it as the price increases. Key area of interest for me is still in and around the 70K mark. I would want to see if price is going to come back. If price at the moment, so we've got a high here, we've got another high here, and we've got another high here, but the volume for me is not reflective of how the price got up there. Okay, and the market will always balance itself out regardless of whatever it is. If this, so what this is probably without getting too technical, it's called a hidden bullish divergence, where the market or the charts are increasingly high. Actually, I got that wrong. No, regular bullish divergence, but the volume profile is not matching what is happening on the charts. So we've created this we've created a higher high here, but we've created a lower low here. Okay, so the volume isn't there on the weekly. This week, aggressive sellers have stepped in. We might still create another high, but until price actually holds above this level and starts testing it, it could start making its way back down again. If price drops below the 93K, so here, the reason why I'm putting it here is where we've got a lot of testing of price points. So price has gone up, tested this area, come back down again, broke through. We want to see if it's actually going to respect this level. This is the level we want to see price come back down to and respect it. So don't feel like, oh, I'll never be able to get Bitcoin. You might be able to get a bit cheaper. You might be able to get it a lot cheaper than this. But what you don't want to do is buy something when it's at its high. Like that's just absolutely bonkers. You're buying it at a high. You want to buy when everyone increasingly fearful what's happening with the market. There's all panic. Every single bit of news you see at the moment is bullish, 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 bullish. Turn on to any mainstream news channel, it's going to be bullish. We are probably going to be their exit liquidity. Once they start giving you all the fear mongering and this is happening or that's happened or that person, this person's been scammed or that's been happening. Banks get hacked and scammed every single day and we don't hear about that. But that's when you want to start looking at, all right, cool. Is Bitcoin coming to a level of for me of interest that I want to come in to get in? So me personally, this is what I'm doing. If I was going to get into Bitcoin, is wait to see what happens around the 94K level, because we've broken back above. We haven't come back anywhere near the 80K level, and we've come nowhere near the 72K level. Okay, and with anything you're trading, you want to take it level to level to see what's happening at a level. You're at this level, the volume isn't. Volume is nowhere near reflective as to when price got up here or even when price got up here. Price got up here, you had your volume profile reflecting that. And since then, it's been declining. For different reasons outside of the crypto space, I get it. But all I do is just look at the charts. If the technicals don't make sense, then I'm not interested with what's going on. I'll cut out the noise, and I've cut out the noise for the last few years, and it's worked for me. So that's one of the things that I wanted to point out to people about Bitcoin. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them now. Or I'll move on to another asset.
So from what you're saying is that a good opportunity to then enter into the market would be once you look at that 94 mark, right? Or are you saying that you should watch it once it hits that 94 mark to see if there's some type of resistance? And then, because I guess I'm trying to figure out how would you know to enter at the 94 or wait for a further drop, right? Because it seems like this thing is like 24 hours. It's trading on like a 24-hour basis. So
yeah,
if you could just touch on that a little bit more on.
Yeah, no problem at all. And the 94K level will be classified as a support. So where we are now, we're at if you just R is for resistance, the roof, and S, the bottom will be the bottom, the floor, as you want to see it. This is our support level. So this would be a support level. I want to see if prices are going to come back and respect this level where it previously broke through. So we broke through this end of April. Price broke through here, done a little test. That's not really significant. Came back up. Now we're in and around this level. If it comes back down to here and you see what you see here, let's say this, we use this one as an example. When it was around the 76 level, these little green wicks that you've got here show it came back down to this level and buyers jumped in. So those green wicks are like showing you that it didn't close red. A lot of buyers stepped in. They were happy to get in at this level and continue to push price back up. You see these little green wicks here, buyers stepped in and pushed price back up. Where you start seeing on the reverse, red wicks is showing you we haven't seen any aggressive red wicks here at a high. So technically it would still be classified as bullish. Here we saw buyers step in aggressively at the 104, 105K mark. Your area for caution would be if you see big red wicks at the top, bringing price back down again because people have taken profits. You can see it here, aggressive red wicks, price came back down, green wick, price went back up. So
gotcha. So that's what you mean by support. Buyers are gonna once it hits that mark, buyers are either gonna jump in aggressively to push that price up, or they're just gonna people are just gonna continue to take profit.
Correct, exactly that. Look for where we but we're at high at the moment, and regardless of if you really are passionate and you want to try and get in at a decent price, if you don't care about the price, it doesn't matter what you get in at. You just got to buy it incrementally, buy some at 104K, buy something that goes down to 90K, buy something that goes down to 80K, and then you just dollar cost average in, and it won't really matter what price you get because it will just average itself out. But if you are, for example, you don't want to get in at this sort of price point, and I'll show you just something else. I don't know if, sorry, can you guys see? I'm just showing you something called the Crypto Fear and Greed Index. Can everyone see my screen?
No, it's blank right now. Okay, I can see now.
Yep. Right, okay. So Fear and Greed Index is just a historic kind of marker that just shows you where we're at now in regards to market sentiment. And with crypto, we're not at all-time greed where you get super bullish news, nothing can ever go wrong, it's fantastic. You do not want to buy at this level, in this level. When everyone is extremely fearful and the news is telling you this person's been hacked, that's happened and everything else, this is when you want to start buying. So as this slightly drops, this is the area you want to look at to possibly buy into any of your assets. Perfect area to buy. Now we're kind of neutral stroke greed, but if it gets to here, then just wait. Just sit on your hands, watch the market, and wait for the fear greed index. Even if you don't know how to trade, just use this. Buy here, sell or take profits, or just hold. Buy some more here, hold. Buy some more here, and that's it. Don't even look at the charts. Try and keep it as simple as possible, because you just confuse yourself with this news outlet, this crypto trader, this person knows that, and if it goes wrong for you, you've got no one else to blame, really.
And one other thing I'd factor into that, Isaac, Antoine, to your question, is that the trends and the charts are definitely very much, legitimate factors. The other factor, though, is that Bitcoin being a new asset class is we don't know. I gave those three scenarios, right? The regular cycle, 4-year cycle, the super cycle, and then the hyper Bitcoinization. We don't know which one of those kind of macro trends is going to take place. And depending, it could really impact, how you use your chart data, your technical analysis, depending on which of those trends actually ends up playing out. So I want to just throw that out there.
Isaac, could you drop that fear and greed link in the chat so I can copy that?
So, I'll have a quick look at Ethereum, and then I'll look at SUI and if there's any others. So we just literally do the same thing. Go to our monthly. So Ethereum is currently trading at 2.5K, thereabouts. Similar thing that I've done here. We've had made its all-time high in 1st of Feb 2018, made another high 1st of May 2021, 2021 December. Right, so we had the most recent high was 1st of November 2024. And on the monthly, we'll look at the wicks again. A lot of profit taken here. It could have been some news that came out that spooked people to take profits back at this level, or it might just be that people were happy at this significant level to take profits. What we've got here is price had made its descent here, so I put this trend chart here to watch it, because I've got what I've seen historically is when price kind of touched a trend line 3 times is when price usually breaks below. Where it touches that trend is something we just have to wait and see. And we are looking on a monthly basis, so we could be waiting a long time. So I'm going to go on a weekly here with Ethereum, actually, because we'll probably get a little bit more data and more information. So cool. This area is a key area of interest, 2,133. So we had price break back down, try to test it, April 2023, broke through 4th of December 2023, and made its, went up to, what's that price there? The top of that one, we'll look at the H, just shy of 4,000, so 3,993, okay? It didn't come back down to test this support level till July 2024, okay? So nearly a year ago. And it's respect to that. People were happy to get in at this level. One thing that we just spoke about in Bitcoin, and which was interesting, is that we didn't see an aggressive buy step in here on a weekly chart. It was still showing quite a few sellers here, which was an interesting indication that people weren't, I don't know if it was a market manipulation or whatever, but people didn't really, buyers didn't really step in here, okay? Which at the time I probably wasn't paying attention to it, so we are looking at hindsight and things that have happened. Hit back up here again. and we hit a high on the November 2024. The volume was incredibly high here. So what you want to look at is the volume here. So the volume here was, no, the volume actually matched that previous high. So there wasn't anything unusual. Normal market activity, volume match previous high. So if let's say the volume had gone really high and the price hadn't, then we would have been like, okay, there's something here that doesn't kind of add up. We just had a lot of profit taken. People thought, right, I'm fine with that, taking some more profits, and we've had price decline and a break through the previous significant support level, and we've hit this trend line right on the money. And buyers have stepped in here aggressively because they're thinking, right, it's Ethereum, anything below 1.5K, I'll gobble it up, and they have aggressively. And price broke back through the resistance, because once it breaks back down below a support and tested it, classified as a resistance level. That's a new resistance level because it now created a support here. Let me just add that in. So we would say this is our new support for Ethereum. What's that low? Sorry. That low here is 1.754. There or thereabouts. Okay, so this area is going to be an area of interest. This might not know, this line here that I've got here might become insignificant. We'll wait and see what price does. And there's not really much more that I can really say about Ethereum. It's a case of we're a bit in a bit of no man's land. We don't know if it's going to create a new support in this level and then we have to move our line up, or if it's going to come back down and retest this level. I really can't tell with Ethereum what's happening at the moment. We're in a random space. Well, historically, we can see here that we had, if we look back to 3rd of Jan 2022, it's still a significant level. But what we've got here is a lot of wicks to the upside, which means a lot of people are selling. So a lot of people are selling this same historic level. So this might actually turn into, this area here might become insignificant. This might actually turn to our new support. So I think we'll wait and see what happens with Ethereum over the course of this month to see how price closes for June, to then give us an indication as to where we want to go. But it does look very, very bullish. So we might be ready to start making a new high, where our previous high was November 2024. So we might be ready to start making new highs. It does look bullish to me. We'll wait and see how we close out this month to get a clear picture. Any questions on Ethereum?
Yeah, quick question. How much does Ethereum like it correlates with Bitcoin? Like, are you always seeing that if Bitcoin goes up, Ethereum goes up, vice versa, or you're not really seeing them that correlated?
I have to be honest, Ethereum has not really been one of the assets that I've traded that much. It's not even one of my favorites. This came as a request. So I couldn't say I've been tracking Ethereum long enough to say it is kind of correlated, even though obviously it's probably the most significant layer one.
Yeah,
I would say I personally don't think it's directly linked to Bitcoin. I think it's kind of starting to do its own thing. But Bitcoin has shown that it's been doing its own thing with all the other alts as well. Usually when Bitcoin goes up, takes a bit of a break, people take profits and flip it into altcoins. We haven't really been seeing at all. We've seen a lot of altcoins still down 60, 70, 80% from their all-time highs. So even Ethereum's all-time high, let's say 1st of December 2021, where Bitcoin has made multiple all-time highs, Ethereum today's price is down 46% from its all-time high, which is still a long way to go. And you can look at any other coin randomly. Let's look at ADA. ADA's all-time high going back to 1st of September 2021. ADA up into today's price is still down 77%. So we're in a very unusual space where usually we will have Bitcoin make an all-time high, altcoins, because people will generally take profits and say, right, I'm happy with what I've made in Bitcoin. Let me put a significant of that into Ethereum, ADA, Gala, Solana, XRP, whatever, because we're then going to see the next rise up for the altcoins, because Bitcoin will start doing a little bit of sideways action, not really doing much. What's happening now? Unusual. And I've done the same thing, taken profits on some of the ones that have made significant gains, put into some of the smaller ones, and it's just been flatline. So yeah, we're in a very unusual space in crypto with a lot of things happening. You're trading, I find them trading a lot more against bots as opposed to general traders. There's a lot more AI trading and trying to trade against a robot with a lot more data, a lot more faster interactions with the market is incredibly difficult. So the little profits that you can take if you're doing futures trading, that's right, that's fine. But if you're investing longer term, it doesn't matter if you're trading against a bot, if you're trading against the largest firm in the world, just you see value in it. You've got your price points where you want to take profits, or you've got a percentage where you want to take profits, that's fine. Otherwise, take it off the centralized exchange, put it into your cold wallet, and then either look to leverage it to as an asset in the future, or pass it on as inheritance or whatever to family and friends, whatever plans you've got for it.
Yeah, and Isaac, just a couple of general observations there as well. One, Ethereum was pretty stagnant for about 6 months. It was like a flat line, like in the first half of the year to the end of last year. But now it's actually started to have some price movement, as you can see in your chart. I think, Antoine, Ethereum, from a use case, it's kind of like silver to Bitcoin being the gold, which is it's effectively like the processing platform for the majority of decentralized finance. So now it is starting to move. So I'll just put that in there. I think the other thing that's also happening, just my take, because it's something I've been doing myself, is I've been shifting more away from alts because there's so much Bitcoin accumulation, and trying to, I guess, becoming a little more Bitcoin maximalist in my strategy, not completely, because there's so much happening. And I think that maybe is reflected, Isaac, in the strength of the Bitcoin chart versus some of the others. So.
Okay, so you're saying you think more people are shifting towards just pouring into Bitcoin and kind of pushing away from alts, and instead of used to doing the opposite, where they're taking that profit and putting into the alts, they're just reinvesting profit back into Bitcoin.
I feel like that's what's happening qualitatively. I mean, I'm not on the charts this way, but qualitatively, that's what I'm seeing is kind of, it feels like that's what's happening right now, is there's a lot more energy going into Bitcoin, probably because of the institutional adoption.
Yeah, I think what's going to end up happening is once it stops, we're going to be caught off guard. And where some of these altcoins have been sleeping and not really doing much, one of the ones that I shared in our Telegram group was DOT. For me, I like DOT. I've always liked DOT for a while. As you can see in the chart, it's been testing a significant level, even when we had a high, a key area for where I thought price would break up and then turn into a support level. It got rejected significantly. So in and around what was that? Just say $5. And it came back down again. But same thing again happened. It's still in that same zone. And I think what will happen is if it breaks below that, then obviously that's worrying. But it's like the alts are just waiting for their moment to absolutely explode. And I think when they do explode, it'll be some of the alts we will never see at those prices again. So that's just something to be mindful. And if you do see one of these altcoins that you feel like, okay, do you know what? I'm going to be in for the long run. I like what they're doing in the project. I like the community. I like their adoption. I like what projects they're integrating with. They've got a real world use case. They're diversifying into other areas, allowing smaller projects to build in their network. And so they're probably offering funds for people to build a network to make their network stronger. So if you're seeing all of these sort of narratives around the space on a fundamental level, price can be irrelevant, or it can be your greatest asset because you'll be able to get in and participate at a very low price. So that's just something to just keep in mind, regardless of what's happening with Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin at the moment might be, do you know what? Yes, it's at a high, even if it comes back down to 60,000, 80,000, 90,000, it's still not really a price that I would want to get in at. And I might not make the gains that I would like to make from crypto. So you might feel like you might be able to put yourself into diversify into smaller, more riskier assets and put a portion into 5 different assets and see one of those will do that 10, 20, 30x. But you might not get necessarily from these blue chip ones. Ethereum, ADA, XRP, Solana, all of those. You might have to look at alternative ones that are just coming into the market. And we can go into those. We haven't really touched on the smaller cap ones, but happy to do more of that in the future.
Isaac, were you going to do SUI?
Yeah, let's have a quick look at SUI now. Very new. I'll go into the monthly, or we'll start from the monthly chart and work your way down. Sorry, was that did that answer your question? Because I know I was just rambling on a bit. Sorry about that.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
So SUI, I have not even charted it. So let's look at. So we had a high when it came onto the scene, May 2023. Broke that high in March, about a year later, March. So this is our area here that we've got. So this was a resistance level, came back down. I'll put this as a support. Let's call this our support, so a little bit higher. So came up, broke through that, created a new high, which is now a resistance. Price got rejected, came straight back down, and in and around the 0.75 cents. You see this green wick here, as we spoke about previously. Buy stepped in aggressively. Okay, love the price. We're like, you know what? It's never come back down to this level again, or I'll get it regardless. And it hasn't. And that was September 2024. Price came back up to that previous all-time high, October 2024. So, and absolutely ripped through it. And you can see the same thing again. Always look forward. If it breaks through a significant area, has it come back down to test it? Is it held as a support? We had to wait until April this year for price to come back down to test this level. So what we're looking at now, I'm just going to put this on a little bit higher. And we've got our green wick here. Buyers stepped in aggressively. Okay. Stepped in aggressively. They love this price. We made the all-time high on the 1st of December, or even 1st of Jan. You see the strong wick here. People were like, either something happened on SUI. I don't know what's happening on SUI or the fundamentals around it, and it was just either there was just a lot of profit taken. Okay, and that was at the all-time high. If we look at the H, 5.368. A lot of selling was done, came back down to, they would look at the L. So this is this candle. We look at the top of the screen at the L, 1.96 was the low, and people stepped in. So what we would want to see, or what I would want to see happen here, is if price is going to come back down to test this level again to show that we've now got a very strong support level. So if we drop down to the weekly, we see what's happening on the weekly market on indicator, and we might even be able to draw a little trend line here actually. So it's interesting. So let's say we've got a touch point here. Okay, I'm happy with this. So we had a key point here and another point here. So I happy to put money on the line. We are going to test this trend line again. And when it tests it for the 3rd time, I can 98% guarantee you it's going to break through it. Okay, we might get a little market manipulation that it breaks through and doesn't really look, it looks like it's breaking through, it doesn't, but it won't create another higher high. And what you've got here is we've got a high here on December, end of the year. Had a lot of selling pressure. So if you look at the volume here, this volume was in and around the same sort of area as we had at the end of the year, okay, if not higher, okay? So what you would want to see is if the volume is where it was making its previous all-time high, why is the charts not doing the same thing? Okay, so you've got your volume coming down. Okay, so the volume's been going down, price has been going up. Okay, so what you would do then is look to see, right, so we've created the volume showing its highs here, but it's not even close to its previous all-time high. We would need this to break back above this level to give us any confidence that it's going to remain bullish. Okay, so I'm just going to draw a little resistance line that you should keep in mind. So areas where we had significant, we had touches here, touches here, touches here, in and around this area. I'll pull it a little bit higher. Sorry, right, so what we want to see is either price break back up above the 4.3. If nothing happens above 4.3 and it gets rejected again, expect price to come back down. Okay, onto you start seeing the volume reflective as to what's actually happening on the charts. So we've made highs, come back down, made another high, got rejected down. We look like we're making a high. Are we going to turn this into a support level? So we can get a support level here. So this would look like an area it kind of stalled. Price came down, tested it again. We ignore that for now. Came back down. A lot of sellers stepped in. It didn't hold, okay? But we're back at that same level again. So this can be another significant level for us. So if we look at this candle, we look at the H at the top, we look at the high, 3.150. I'm just going to put that in.
And by the way, for those who don't know, SUI is a coin that comes out of the group that was in Facebook. They were doing the Facebook Libra coin or whatever it was, and then obviously that got shut down. And this is the people who basically came from that project. So it's been watched by a lot of people.
All right, I'm just gonna bring that price down because that's where the wicks are. I think this would be our support. I think a support level, it doesn't have to be bang on, but it doesn't look like it. Well, we have to see what happens on this week, at the end of this week, Sunday, see what happens, close the market. If it's gonna close, this red one here could possibly close. We can go down to the day actually. Oof, doesn't look good. Yeah, we can bring this down a bit more now actually. Yeah, let's see what happens here. If this turns into a green wick, this red one turns into a green wick and it holds. Otherwise, we will see SUI probably looking to go down. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier, the market always looks to balance out. You've got to have buyers and sellers on both sides. So you look for equilibrium in the market. Here we just got buyers, 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 buyers. Here and we have buyers here. The market regulated and balanced out. So it's filled this area where we just had constant buyers. We want to have an equilibrium in the market. We don't always get it, but 9 out of 10 times we do. And we want it to fill this kind of gap in this area here to give us the balance, okay? Because we've constantly just had people buying and no one's been taking profits. So what I would expect is price to fill this area here. And this might be the point where we have price come back down to touch our thing. So let's say, let's put this on and I'll bring this back up at our next month to see where we're at. I believe we'll be looking at SUI coming in at 2.27. You can hold me to that. If I'm wrong, I will delete this app and never talk about it again. And if I'm right, you're gonna hear a lot from me. Okay, so John, I reckon it's gonna, I personally feel it'll come back down to fill this area, touch this zone here. So 2.27. It's going to be an area of, definitely an area of interest. If I was trading it, I would happily trade this to short it back down to that price level. Any questions on SUI? Just quickly just look at the high. Just want to just measure what it's done. Just quickly just see what sort of gains. So even if we go right to the top of the high, actually that's not, let's just go around here. So we drop down another, what's that? So if you can see in the brackets here, it'll tell you what percentage it's dropped from the top to where the price is now. So that's around 40%. And that's not to say it can't go any lower. 60–70% is usually an area of interest. This is so new. Yeah, this is such a new asset, so there's probably going to be a lot more profit taken with this one. So you might even be able to get this one at a good price if you're looking at this as a long-term investment. But if I was waiting, I'll wait to see market balance itself out in this area before I do anything. And if it does come back down to this area and doesn't then break back above this $3 mark, I'll more than put enough money that's going to break back down a little bit lower before then making another push for higher prices. Cool. Any questions? I can hand back to John to take us through for the last segment before we go to some more general Q&As. Let me know if that's helpful for you or if that's just too much information, I'm going too fast or totally confused, you want something a little bit more straightforward. If feedback would be really appreciated, or you know all of this and it's an absolute waste of time.
Yeah, I wanted to know if you trade, you day trader, you are swing, you invest, and yeah, if you are regular on the markets.
Yeah, so I check the markets every single day. I used to do day trading when I was first starting off, looking at the time frames from 5 minutes to 2 hours, and that was absolutely ridiculous. Now I'm more of a swing trader. I do invest as well. I invest and I stake, but I like trading because I think it keeps my mind sharp. I know I won't be able to make generational wealth from trading. I solely use trading literally just to keep my mind sharp, keep an eye on the market, what's happening. I enjoy it. One of the things you should always ask people who day trade is how much have they lost? A lot of people say, oh, how much have you made? I probably balanced out. I'm probably at back to neutral. I made a significant amount and I've lost a significant amount. And I'm at a stage where now I feel like I know the market very well. I take very little L's. Because now I do swing trading, I get in at price, whether it's to buy or sell, where I'm like 99% sure I'm not going to lose. And I can only do that because I've got so many other things going on and I can't be checking it every 5 minutes. I can check the market for a week and not go about it, but it's important if you're trading on it, you're checking the market every day. And it can only literally be about 5–10 minutes of just looking at the charts, and that can be enough. And there's enough information out there on Twitter. I use Twitter, I use AI, Claude, and ChatGPT to get some analysis as well. So yeah, swing trading for me, it's a lot more less risky, and I can focus on all my other projects and ventures and businesses without getting too distracted on looking at the candles waking up and down every 5 minutes.
I can give you my techniques.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I use a tool that the name is Quantify Crypto. It's a screener with you see all the coins, and you have data on it. And when it's red, everything is red. I check the 10 top crypto, and I choose one with minus 10%, and I buy it. And I wait it go up between 5 and 10, and I'm waiting the next time everything is red to do the same. Okay. And it can be sometimes you don't have luck because it's go down a lot, but 70% of the time it's working. So.
And that strategy works for you, and. Yeah. There's so many different strategies. I use the indicators I haven't even put onto the charts. One of the indicators I use is an indicator called Lux Algo. It's worked absolutely wonders for me. because it gives me the information that I need to. I'll just show one of the indicators. But I don't think it's it's interesting because I haven't had this indicator on for but it also shows the levels that we're showing. So you don't really need indicators if you're doing it all the time. So the same levels that we've marked up without even looking at putting these indicators on, this is an equilibrium. Okay, so this is where market needs to regulate and balance out. So I'm even more confident now, obviously putting on my indicators that it's making sense what I'm seeing. One of my indicators here, the oscillator, is showing what the volume is showing. And we talked about the volume, but you don't need flashy, expensive indicators to look at charts. The less lines, the less markups and everything else you got, the better it is for you to get a clear vision as to what's going on. And this has helped me to be able to help and coach other people to do the same thing. We had a high here, as we talked about. My indicator showing me that, yes, price has made another high, but as you can see, it's literally on the halfway line, ready to go back down lower. So I've now put myself to 100%, as before I was saying 99, whatever, that we are going to see a decline. And I'm probably more confident that by the time we come back on to our next webinar, we would have seen price probably would have evened itself out. But the market is the market. The market can do whatever it wants. We're not the controllers of the market, and we can't come back and it's just gone skyrocketed and made another higher high. But it needs to get back above this level, and I can't see it coming this level. We're showing all these red wicks here. People are selling and taking profits, selling and taking profits constantly. So that's one of the things to keep an eye out for. Cool. Okay. Questions?
Share my screen. All right, so we're going to take a look at the Ethiopia Grand Renaissance Dam project now. We can see that. And let me close this. So this to me is, I would consider an African success story. Ethiopia's Grand Renaissance Dam, and there was a bunch of controversy over them building it, but I'm glad they were able to get the project off the ground. It has excess hydroelectric power for 50,000 ASIC miners. The initiative has generated $180 million in Bitcoin reserves since January 2025, the estimates I've seen, and local employment has surged to 2,000 new tech jobs. Ethiopia is aiming to become Africa's premier renewable Bitcoin mining hub. So a lot going on. Obviously, that's on the Nile, the Grand Renaissance Dam. So we can see that 100% renewable energy, right? The dam has 6,450 megawatts of hydroelectric power for mining operations. And this is why I say that this is something that should be repeatable in Africa. There's so much renewable energy, whether it be solar, whether it be geothermal, whether it be hydroelectric, whether it be other, all of that is available across the African continent. National Treasury, Ethiopia now holds 3,200 BTC, so I can calculate exactly what that is, but significant amount of Bitcoin they're holding at this point from their mining operations. Community impact, their mining revenues funding tech education, 5,000 Ethiopian students monthly learning in tech education based on the revenues that are coming out of this. And just so you guys know, even though I did try to double and spot check everything, I use AI for a lot of the research. So sometimes it hallucinates. So you can see the different sources, things like that. You can double check them, but just note that. Global partnerships, joint ventures with diaspora-led tech firms also brought cutting-edge ASIC technology to Ethiopia. So they were able to get a lot of that in the country and other providers as well. We can see diaspora investment estimate here, 230 million raised, 15 diaspora-led VC firms and invested double since January 2025, and equity structure with the Ethiopian government. I know China's been involved in this as well, by the way. I didn't note it here. Technical expertise, diaspora engineers led the ASIC optimization. And so you got cooling systems for the Ethiopian climate, energy efficient mining technology and knowledge transfer programs, which is really important, local universities. So they're getting that knowledge into the population, into the people, right? Which is what, that like 50 years ago, China was not at the top of the global economy, but what they did is they had a ton of knowledge transfer back to their people and through universities. So Ethiopia is doing that now. And global connections, strategic partnerships with major crypto exchanges, right? So direct BTC treasury, just like most countries in the West are doing already, cross-border regulatory compliance frameworks, and integration with African payment networks. So the Ethiopian economy is really incorporating this Bitcoin, which is a great thing for Ethiopia and for the continent, for that matter. Cardano Foundation has been involved. I'm not sure how much they're involved with the mining. I know they did a lot of stuff in the education space, and we'll look at that in a moment with Ethiopia. Blockstream, I understand, did the ASIC, provided the hardware for the Ethiopia's climate conditions. So I guess it was kind of climate attenuated to make sure that that was good for what Ethiopia needed. And then also regulatory frameworks in Singapore. As I mentioned, China, Kenya provided regional exchange partnerships as well in this also. And I think that it say maybe the numbers on the next slide. So I think they're now doing about 2.5% of the global Bitcoin mining, which is pretty powerful. So they just started this. So the mining ecosystem, hydropower, obviously coming off of the Nile and the Grand Renaissance Dam, 600 megawatts for mining operations at 0.045 cents per kilowatt hour. And Chinese firm Bit Mining invested 114 million, 51 megawatt operation. And again, 18,000 mining rigs. There's arguments both ways about, China's investment or not. But what basically happens, it gives different African countries multiple options that they can then, kind of take their best pick on how they're going to do it. And obviously, Ethiopia had used a lot of Chinese equipment to get this done. Economic impact. Generated 55 million for Ethiopian electric power in the first year rather than traditional power exports. As I told you, you can use the extra power not only obviously for powering your grid in African nations, but also you can use it for the mining. It's that mining is giving you another revenue stream, right? So another revenue stream is coming in off of that, which is really very beneficial. And then the regulatory framework, mining legally permitted with strict licensing, though cryptocurrency trading, I don't think it's banned, but I think it's very restricted, actually, trading. However, the mining, there's licensing that the government has, as you'd expect, and it contributes about 2.5% of global Bitcoin hash rate. I would love to see Africa and Diaspora account for 10%, 15, 20% of mining, because then effectively these nations become, money sovereign, because this is going to be the new money platform. AI will be the technology platform, and the token, the payment layer is going to be blockchain and Bitcoin. And I say this with some confidence because I'm a technology guy, as many of you know. So I follow this stuff very closely. And this is the project they did with Cardano, even though that coin has not gone up at all from the analysis Isaac just did. They were doing digital student IDs, developer training with IOHK, which is their foundation for Cardano, which is what that is. And then educational infrastructure, right, was put in. They help with that. Although now there are competing systems. Apparently World Bank's incorporated FIDA, if I said correctly, a centralized ID system. And they've been trying to do a lot of this centralized ID across Africa. I'm of two minds about it, because on the one side, great, it probably provides, some inclusion in the economy and the, kind of the monetary system. On the downside of it, though, a lot of those IDs are actually going to be used for centralized control, especially with AI. So there's kind of a pro and a con to what's happening there, but this is kind of what they did with Cardano Foundation, right? All right. And then, as I talked about, we're looking at now launching the Wakanda African Investment Group. So the idea being that we want to pioneer Africa's economic renaissance through investments in blockchain, renewable energy. So we want to start doing it as a group, collectively, looking at projects. There are some ideas that we've been looking into that I'm going to go over next. So African Bitcoin Real Estate Project, I had some help here. That news on, give a hand in this, and the watching how the cryptocurrency is revolutionizing property development across Africa. I'm going to show you a concept here. Innovative model combines Bitcoin financing, sustainable building practices, and we can see how developers are doing that. So I want to show you a sample. This comes from the Gambia. Let me switch over here. I'm going to stop the share and restart it so we make sure you get sound, because we want to do it with a sound. Yep, sound is on. All right, so this is kind of one of the inspiration projects. I think there's also another one in Dubai, actually. concept behind this, and we'll look at it, it basically integrates Bitcoin into the operations tokenization. It also has the ability for payments. I think there's some mining that's associated with it as well. But the idea behind that real estate is that it kind of puts that concept out there, because if you talk to people across the African continent, a lot of them will tell you, and I've had many of these conversations, that, oh, this is a scam, this is not going to work, this is not important, you don't need it. And that's something that we really need to change, because as we know, throughout the West and China, Middle East, everybody else is moving heavily in this direction, right? So for Africa diaspora to still think it's a scam, hopefully real estate projects like this will let people start seeing something tangible that they can actually go, oh, there's something real here. This is not just, people, doing something weird stuff on the internet. And, and it starts to give people the idea that, oh, okay, maybe there's something real associated with this, right? So we can see the real estate project here, right? The idea is that we're pioneering property investments, tokenization, so it can be, tokenized fractional ownership across investors, and we're still figuring out how to structure this. So we're kind of working through some of these ideas. Smart contracts for rental income, right? Distribution across the different, and it's transparent, because one of the big issues often is people are concerned about corruption. That can be eliminated because blockchain is publicly viewable by everybody. Everybody can track and see where these transactions are, and are recorded on chain. And then local economic impact. So the projects employ local construction teams, right? We want to see people build the local skills, just like Ethiopia is doing, right? To be able to build, integrate, and each development creates around 50 to 100 permanent jobs. And then also cross-border investment. So diaspora members can directly invest in their home countries through this, and also remittance fees and things along those lines. And one of the other things is the idea of doing mining on site. I was looking at a very interesting, innovative kind of containerized mining. It was actually for dual use. It could be used for mining and for AI data centers that would be, kind of like self-contained and put around the African continent in key locations, and projects that could actually be associated with these. So then you would actually have, like for digital nomads, or if let's say any of us in diaspora want to go, everything would kind of be set up where all your technology is set up, running. You have, good high-speed data. There's Bitcoin, the mining, you have all your transactions can easily be done. And that would be the concept there.
Good.
Okay, these are just some concept ideas that AI helped to generate, right? So things like as quick start, some Airbnb properties that, as we said, like digital nomads could go to like studio apartments that are in a building like that one, and that would have a certain return. Obviously, that's potential. These are guaranteed returns. Beach villas. We're looking at some areas in Ghana, the Prom area, actually, that were a possibility for some of those types of things. And having, similar. There's a big diaspora community there, an African diaspora there, African American, and then also Bitcoin nomad digital hubs as well. I'm looking at some things at Accra for that as well, with co-living spaces, integrated workspaces, 45 to 60-day renovation timeline, and kind of a yield of 18%. So these are some of the ideas and the concepts that we're thinking of. I think we've got a couple more here. So the integration of Bitcoin into these properties is here. So you'd be looking at tokenized ownership, as we talked about on the previous slide, DeFi yield generation, so we can stake Bitcoin. People can actually use those tokens for liquidity provisioning. People can invest in it that way, and revenue recycling into new developments, and especially with the mining aspects that we talked about the strategy earlier, that Bitcoin can actually be taken, uses collateral along with the property itself to be able to build additional investments, because that is going to, hopefully, you'll see very strong growth in Bitcoin. And then on-site integration, so Bitcoin payment systems, mining operations, as we talked about, educational resources to teach people about it, so that it's a little more tangible and real for them, and they don't just think, oh, this is some magic internet money, right? And then project funding pipeline, so we reinvest our DeFi yields, scale from quick launch to complex projects, and there's some ideas for much larger projects that I didn't include here. And then self-sustaining expansion model, as we talked about, being able to use that collateral to keep on building and rebuilding, even, in additional locations. Okay. And then this one, this is actually, let's see if I put a little bit of the video. Basically, Bitcoin mining renewable energy in Africa, renewable integration. So Bitcoin mining operations harness Africa's abundant solar and hydro resources, creating demand that funds new clean energy. And the idea here is there's a lot of places, obviously, they're completely off grid, and this can actually be done. I'm going to show you a little bit of a video. Let's play the whole thing. I'll play that 5 minutes. Mining operations create technical jobs, paying 3 to 5 times the local wages. So it's a great way to invest in the local economy and providing investors with a competitive return on investment. You get an energy surplus, excess capacity is going to power local communities, right? So the power goes in there, electricity for schools, hospitals, businesses, like our little image here, and community ownership. They can get tokenized ownership, actually, of small amounts and creating wealth that remains in the community. So I'm going to play a little bit of that video. I think I've got it here. Can you guys hear the sound?
In East Africa. And what was life like before you had electricity?
Imagine life without electricity. No way to store food, no lights for studying, nor to watch Bitcoin journalists on YouTube, and no power for hospitals or emergencies. For millions across the world, this isn't a hypothetical, it's reality. In remote parts of Africa, the national grid simply doesn't reach. And even where it does, power outages are common. So why aren't energy companies stepping in to solve this? Well, electricity providers won't invest in remote areas if there aren't enough customers to cover costs. It's a business, and building infrastructure is too expensive without guaranteed demand. So how do you create demand when there is none? And what if there was a way to turn unused energy into something valuable, something that could fund these projects? This is where Bitcoin mining comes in. I visited a secluded Bitcoin mine deep in rural Kenya, one that very few people even know exists. It's a place that could radically change the future for energy poverty in Africa. Let me show you.
Can't believe we're walking through the bush on the way to a mining site. I can hear I think either the miners or the energy generators. The sound of the energy generation is competing with the sound of the Bitcoin miners. The Bitcoin miners is like a high pitch, and the energy generation is a...
In this remote community, a river offers not only a lifeline, but a power source. Hydrobox, a company dedicated to bringing power where it's needed, has come up with the following solution in central Kenya. Here's how it works. They divert water into 2 streams that drive turbines to generate electricity. From the top left of the shot, the river is diverted, running along the canals I just walked past before flowing down the slope, underneath the solar panels and into the turbines to generate electricity. It then rejoins the main body of the river in the bottom left corner. But powering a small village with hydropower alone is costly, and without enough users, connection costs remain high. By placing Bitcoin miners right next to the power source, they ensure a constant buyer for surplus energy, making this system more sustainable and lowering electricity costs for everyone. It's a win-win. Hydrobox gets a steady customer while Gridless and the villagers benefit from cheaper, reliable power. Just when it seems like Gridless is the only company mining in this area, we uncover signs of another player, one quietly experimenting with Bitcoin mining. More on that later.
The next thing is to understand how they're mining Bitcoin here, and that's where we're going now. This is where the Bitcoin are made, and it's very loud and hot. I'm stood in the shade right now behind the Bitcoin mines, and it's hotter in the shade than it is in the sun. The plant generates more electricity than the local community needs, so Gridless comes in and mines Bitcoin with this wonderful 100% green hydroelectricity. But the added benefit of this is that energy prices for the entire region start to drop, and on top of that, electrification is taking place. What does that mean? It means the villages that didn't used to have electricity and would work at candle night in the evenings, they now have electricity. And listen to how Douglas explains it. Has this helped you at all?
Yeah, it's useful.
So you have light in the evenings now?
Now we enjoy, we have light, we enjoy screen, we enjoy everything.
What was your village like before then?
While we are cooking, others use some firewood, but now people are changing the lifestyle. Some are using now electricity to cook. Now we are using electricity to use their food for their livestock, you see. That is the two reason why people are enjoying now electricity.
Do you know what Bitcoin is?
What?
Bitcoin?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, yeah. Have you heard of Bitcoin before?
They have it.
Yeah, they have it.
Yeah.
They have Bitcoin here, yeah. Is electricity cheaper now
because of this?
Yeah, now people are enjoying it.
Now they're enjoying electricity.
Oh, yeah, enjoying electricity.
Amazing.
I grew up
And I won't play the entire thing, but he goes into some of the homes in the nearby village where they have TV, light bulbs, everything else because of this project. This is actually a huge problem across the continent where the electric grids don't stay up. People really can't, a lot of things can't be done because they actually don't have consistent electricity, which we take for granted, obviously, in Western countries. So these types of things where the Bitcoin mining is used to, basically provide a revenue stream and obviously build more Bitcoin, because the more we diversify the mining, the more it secures the Bitcoin network and the better it is for everybody. These are the kind of things that we'd like to invest in. And this is kind of one of the ideas of this Bitcoin renewal real estate project, right? So the idea, our community, obviously within our meetups and investment, we're looking at this potentially as one. If you're interested in that, you can reach out. If you had to reach me on our meetup site, I can also include my LinkedIn there. And we're working with a team to start developing a group that will look at some projects that potentially we can do to do this, and obviously education to help investors learn about how we might do this. So this is something that we want to start with our Wakanda African Investment Group, and we'll hopefully have some exciting projects for you guys in the next few months that we can begin to, tokenize and then invest in. Okay? So I don't know if anybody has any questions about that.
I think it's a very good idea, and we need this kind of project, and it's a good timing because we have the AI that will kill a lot of jobs. People will fear about retirement, and I've seen on the slides that it's not a guarantee, but you put 20% of a return annual. So somebody who invests $300,000 gets anything for his retirement. So for me, it's a genius idea, and we need this kind of project. And the tips I had when I was reading and seeing the video, you need to succeed on this project, and after to make a franchise to accelerate, because many people from Diaspora will see it like a genius idea and want to do the same. And you will be happy to have many people who want to copy you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We need a very good pilot and able to then basically build on that momentum. So yeah, yes. Definitely.
And you have fixed entry tickets for this investment for the moment?
The investments, we are going to look at the structuring and the size of it. So we're working on that now, and we're going to share that with the group. So we're looking at basically some pilots, as we talked about. It might be some of the quick starts, I think, first, to maybe start to understand, make sure that we understand the aspects of the concept.
Yes.
Okay, where the quick start wouldn't go. And then we may build from some of these quick starts into more expansive ones. And there are much more expansive projects that potentially we may be able to do. So we're looking at the project budgets now, and we will work from that and then start to share that with the whole Wakanda group and those who want to be involved.
Okay. Very interesting.
Questions, thoughts? And thank you, Edna, for volunteering on the African side to help. So would love to see, there's actually a chart that I showed in our Telegram chat group where we talk. I think basically 2% or something of all Bitcoin mining in the world takes place on the African continent. That could really increase tremendously. And it's going to create so much wealth and prosperity for all, not only Africans and all diaspora, right? That there's so much potential there for that. So hoping that we can really get this to, take off. And that is kind of the concept of our pilot project for the investment group. Okay, any other questions across anything? Not only this, but any of the market trends, trading analysis, anything else you guys want to talk about as we come to the end of the session?
No, thanks so much for this information. I do have to run, but you said you have a Telegram group, or how often do you
We do, yeah. So there
that?
is a Telegram group. Let me copy a link into the chat for you guys. Give me 1 second. We chat there like every day. We're always talking about stuff. So that's one of the best places if you want to keep up on what's going on. Let me just grab the link here. Give me a moment.
And do you all do these meetings like once a month or every
Yeah, once
Saturday?
a month. We try to do it once a month. We'll see over the summer here if the cadence will change, but once a month is what we've been doing for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And thank you for joining. We're happy to. And here's the link for you, Lynette. I'm gonna give you that right there. Okay, so that's to join the Telegram group, and we chat every day there. And then I'm also gonna put my LinkedIn profile link if anybody needs to message me that way. You can feel free to do that as well. About the Wakanda African Investment Group, as we're putting it together and putting together African Bitcoin real estate projects. So let me go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. Okay, and that's my LinkedIn. So both those are in the chat. All right. Other questions, comments, thoughts on any of these?
Well, I had a quick question for Isaac. So, Isaac, you kind of hinted towards being bullish towards DOT. I guess, like, in your opinion, is what altcoins would you recommend to buy at this point, or are you bullish with right now?
I wouldn't make any recommendations as such.
Right.
People don't really understand how markets work. But the one held for a considerable amount of time is Gala. I've always kept on scaling into Gala. ADA, I've been staking ADA for God knows how long now. I've been staking ADA. People don't understand, staking is basically locking up your asset, and you will receive a percentage of the locked up asset in that pool. Just as it helps to secure the network, so there's not constantly aggressive selling in there as well. So ADA, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello. Sorry, can you hear me? Oh,
yes.
Sorry about that. I didn't have my headphones. I wasn't sure if I was being received. Yeah, so one that I've been holding for a long time as well. XRP. I don't think I'm going to sell XRP at any point. DOT as well, like I've mentioned before, and in other smaller wallets, I've got some other random coins that I bought. I couldn't even tell you the names without having to go into the wallets to see what they are. And they're very, very speculative ones that I've got very small amounts in, but they've got a high potential of outdoing what Bitcoin, Ethereum, ADA, XRP could possibly do in the market, because they're smaller cap ones. But those ones, I'm happy to share those ones actually in the Telegram group, because I think people have to be aware that there are smaller cap ones that people can get into if you could do the right analysis, or you've got the right platforms that helps you do the analysis. And one of the platforms that I think we've always advocated is Tokenomics. They share some very good insight. I can share their platform and links. They've got they're very data driven, which I like. I like looking at data, and that will help you identify coins that are in their infancy that you could probably get in at very, very low risk. You literally just follow what they're doing in the charts, and otherwise, for the safe bet, if you are just coming into crypto, you're not sure, always just focus on the top 10. Focus on the top 10, find the right prices, and just go in small, and just obviously get in incrementally at different levels.
Great, thank you. Okay. And John, quick question. You said something about wrap Bitcoin earlier, and then borrowing against that. What is that like using your Bitcoin to buy another type of asset, or okay.
Yeah, so if you look here, this is CoinGecko, right? This is where we can look at on the charts. If you guys can see that. Bitcoin is up here at the top. You can see it's 105,000 currently, and you can see the supply. Should have our circulating supply over here, right? So it should be 21 million if it's showing it. Anyway, so that is going to show what we have for Bitcoin, but you're going to see down a little bit further, wrap Bitcoin, which is almost always the exact same price as Bitcoin. So what happens is you take your Bitcoin, and then when you swap and convert it, it locks it into an Ethereum, basically, protocol. And so now your Bitcoin is there. And so effectively, you can now take this and you can use it on multiple DeFi platforms, right? John Mark mentioned one, I mentioned Aave, Strike, a lot of other ones, and you can lock it in, you can do lending, you can borrow against it in other assets, stable coins if you want, you can get yield, right? Because you're liquidity providing, so you get actually more interest, earning more Bitcoin or wrap Bitcoin from what you have. So it makes it a very powerful financial asset, basically just taking your Bitcoin here and wrapping it into this guy.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions, comments, thoughts? That's circulating supply. Should also be 21 million. Other thoughts? Anything else anybody would like to ask about before we wrap up for the day?
I saw that Coinbase and American Express is like coming out with like a credit card. How do you feel about, you know, Bitcoin credit cards, and do you think that's like another way for these institutions to try to take, you know, Bitcoin from us? Yeah, how do you feel about that?
So I'll comment, then I'll let Isaac or anybody else comment as well if you guys have thoughts. I think that I don't mind, because I think that the more this gets adopted is the more we're going to see this transfer of wealth into the asset class, right? Now, the thing is, it's got to be balanced out. If everything goes into Bitcoin credit cards and nothing goes into like the Caribbean or, you know, Latin America or Africa, that's problematic, because then the wealth is not really being distributed. But if we have a bunch of mining going on in Africa, and you get a lot of financial institutions who are doing things like the, you know, Bitcoin. I mean, I have Bitcoin debit cards or whatever. I've Coinbase and all that kind of stuff, right? So I use those, crypto.com, and they're convenient because it bridges the new financial system and the old one for me. And it also, the more awareness happens, then the more those prices are going to go up because the institutional money's there. And then if you have at the same time, you know, a lot of mining, a lot of people using it across, you know, the global South and everything else, now all of a sudden, you know, Caribbean, Global South, now all of a sudden that wealth is getting transferred into the hands of the people there. The only bad scenario is if the Global South does not start adopting it, in which case then it just all goes to the institutions.
Okay. Do you have the price for installing a mining farm, a small one? It's 10K, it's 20K, 50K?
It depends on the configuration, actually. So it's based on the A6 miners, and that is actually something we need to start pricing out. So we were having some conversations with that dual use technology for the AI and the Bitcoin kind of mining capability, and we're pricing that out. And if you're on, I don't know, was there any pricing that you remember from those conversations for those units?
What was that? Which one? So I said that again, John?
No, I was asking if there was any pricing, if I remember, but we'll be taking a look for that, John Martin, to get pricing that we'll use for units that we'll use for our developments. So that is forthcoming. But it can really range depending on, you know, if you want a very low power thing, like you said, it may not be very much at all. But if you want something that's competitive, it can actually mine blocks, and, you know, it's actually going to probably, you know, when it generate more Bitcoin, it's going to cost more. So we are working on that, looking at that pricing, and we can follow up with you guys on that too.
Okay. And maybe it's also possible to buy second-hand equipment, because it will be the millionaire farm are changing very quickly equipment. So there's a place for second-hand equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a possibility of that. I think it's a great idea. Other thoughts? Questions?
And do you think there's the flow of people from diaspora to the continent? Do you think it's stable? Do you think it's growing, or we don't know at all?
You mean in terms of the Bitcoin mining capacity?
No, some people are coming from Europe to Ghana or Nigeria or Kenya. The flow of people.
Answer that, John.
Okay.
May I?
Yes.
Okay.
Cool.
So I do African real estate consultancy. What I do is I help people from the diaspora to move back to the continent.
Yes.
So I have clients looking for homes, or they're starting to build, or they're doing investment. So there's an inflow. I'll tell you the regions I cover. I cover Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, and Western Africa. So I have clients, some are wanting to settle in Ghana, and some are wanting to settle in Cape Town, South Africa, and some in Kenya. So they're all targeting at maybe a period of 3 to 5 years. So everybody's trying to purchase now, like they're buying off-payment assets, meaning the buildings, which are upcoming projects, because it's cheaper for them. And then by 3 years, by the time they'll move from the West, they would have been finished. So they'll have their home in Africa. So that's what I'm pretty much helping people with. And it works out well. There's quite a number.
Okay.
There is definitely a trend of people moving either, part of the year or having setting up second residence to have back on the continent. A lot of people are starting to do that from diaspora, from African American, et cetera. We're seeing a lot more of that because obviously there's a lot of disturbing trends happening in the West at this point that, people just want to have that option available and be included.
Yes.
So, yeah. Other questions? Comments?
And what is your takes about universal salary?
Universal
because
basic.
of AI. Because of AI, do you think it's doable? It's a dream, or what?
I think I'm very concerned about that, honestly. I think it's probably more popular in Europe than it is in the US, I would guess. However, either way, I don't think it's going to work for Africa. Because, Africa, you barely have a functioning electric grid. How much more are people going to get digital universal basic income, right? But the other aspect that concerns me more about that is, or equally about that, is that if it does happen, which is going to take a lot of work, it's not going to just be free. There's going to be criteria associated with it, right? So they're going to say, well, you can have it, but you have to make sure that, you live within this certain boundary, or you don't go outside of this area, So there's going to be a lot of criteria with programmable money like that I personally am not excited about. I would prefer I expect it's going to have a lot less impact on the continent because, as I said, the infrastructure is not there. But either way, the infrastructure is really not there on the continent, right? So even if the West and Europe adopt it completely, China's got their EU1 or whatever they're doing their thing. I don't think they give universal basic income right now, but I can almost guarantee that it's not going to be almost guarantee it's not going to be on the African continent. So, Africa is currently cut out of the Western financial system for the most part, right? Most day-to-day Africans. So I think the last thing that people on the African continent should be looking at is, oh, I'm going to get universal basic income. Unless you live in a Western country, I don't think that's likely.
Okay. But the continent is so rich. Some country could be like Qatar with the natural resources. Yeah, but there's a lack of governance and and vision.
Yeah. And I think that if we see a lot more of Bitcoin across the continent, I mean, it may just end up being a bridge asset, right? But it's still going to move the wealth where you can actually see real development in Africa. You can see real, people being able to invest in their communities. And when that happens, whatever happens to Bitcoin in the future, you still see a wonderful, kind of, a renaissance in Africa, right? Which is what I'd love to see, right? So I think that this is really kind of our bridge to that future, right? Where people across the continent really can benefit, from this.
Great.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts? Well, great, everyone. It's been a really good session. As always, Isaac, thanks. Thanks, everyone. Jean-Marc, everyone else. Antoine, all the questions. And I appreciate you guys all being here. And we hope to have something soon for you on the Wakanda African Investment Group, as well as the Bitcoin Real Estate Africa projects as well. So looking out for that. I'll probably maybe be contacting a few of you. Jean-Marc, if you want to just message me on LinkedIn. I know you had a lot of questions on it. Antoine, I've already got yours. That way I can kind of, maybe go back and forth, a little dialogue as we're developing some of this. And we want to get some of our best ideas as we start working on this.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your weekend and great Father's Day weekend. And we'll see you guys online in the Telegram group, in our meetup group, and next month, hopefully. The next month. Yep.
Thank you a lot.
Everyone.
Bye.
And Isaac, if you got a second, go ahead. Yeah, Isaac, if you got a second, just looking for the next month. Were you were asking about a different time for next month? Is that what you're saying?
Smack bang in the middle of British summertime here in the UK, so might have to look at some other times. But I'll drop you a line.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks. All right.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.